Good morning, everyone. We have Shawn Griffith here with us today, and he's doing some exciting things. And I want to share some of the detail behind where he's been and where he is today to make sure folks who are watching this feel more empowered to be able to do real estate themselves and achieve a life of freedom for themselves. Because I've done it, Shawn's done it, a lot of folks have done it, and I try to have some different folks on here to show that it is possible. I want the viewers to know this is possible. It does take action. So, Shawn, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, Tony, I really appreciate you inviting me on the podcast, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. So tell us a little bit about yourself, because we've had conversations, and you used to work the W-2 job. You were doing that, like many folks, many of the viewers, like myself. I had a W-2 job, and so tell us a little bit about your background, Shawn.
So I'll give you the very condensed version of a fairly lengthy career. When I was in high school, I enlisted in the delayed entry program in the Navy, and I also applied for a scholarship. I know you'll be utterly shocked to know that the government screwed up the paperwork on the scholarship, but so by the time they got it straightened out, I was already through electronic school, went to school, was commissioned. So spent some time out at sea in the Navy. When I got out of the Navy, I went to work for Texas Instruments in Dallas. I worked for them for about 9.5 years until they sold their defense group to Raytheon. Raytheon packed up and moved out of town. I did some what I called creative unemployment. I did like some access database babysitting for some small companies. I ended up on a contract job over at Southwest Airlines, and they liked my work. They invited me to come on. I worked for them for 14 years. I retired, went back east, took care of my dad for a couple of years, and did some contract work. And then when Dad passed away and my contracts dried up, told the contracting company, hey, we'll move anywhere in the country, just find me and my wife jobs. And they literally called me the next day and said, hey, we've got this gig in Dallas we think you'd be perfect for. And I go, yeah, who's it with? And they go, Southwest Airlines. And I'm going, I could work with them. And they go, yeah, we figured you might. So I did a contract job with them, and then I floated around town doing some contract jobs here and there. And then June of last year, I gave them notice and said, hey, guys, I can't do any more contract work. And they go, well, why not? I said, well, my CPA says this is a really good year for me to be a real estate professional. And they get this blank look because they had no idea what I was talking about. And so I started explaining it, and they get that slow nod, like they're hearing the words, but there's nothing connecting inside, so they really didn't know what I was talking about. And they go, can you work till the end of August? And I go, no, I'm giving you 4 weeks notice now. And because I know sometimes it's hard to find people to replace, because I said I'm willing to train somebody, do whatever. But yeah, that was kind of the short and dirty. But so if you overlay over that timeline, if you back up about 12 years, I started passively investing in real estate. And if anybody's considering, making money in real estate, I would encourage them to find a good sponsor and get into a deal as a passive investor, because that's a way to learn it without spending a ton of time. Because if it's done right, being a deal sponsor or a general partner is a lot of work.
Yes. So why? Let's talk a little bit about the why of getting into real estate. I have my why, but what was your why for getting into real estate? Kind of transitioning, not even transitioning. Yeah, I mean, you did it on top of your job, right? And so again, I want to stress that so the viewers know, hey, this isn't something you got to go quit your job and go both feet into. You can do this real estate investing while working your day job. So why did you decide to go passively invest in real estate?
There were a bunch of different reasons. I read the Little Purple Book that a lot of people have read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, that really got me interested in other options outside the stock market, right? One of those was obviously real estate. And I had a friend that invited me to invest in a deal. And long story short, got in a deal with him. I'm still invested with him 12 years later in some other deals. That one's already sold. We only made like 3.5 times our money on that one. So that kind of spoiled me and got me hooked on real estate. Just so your listeners are clear, 3.5 times money is not the norm.
Yeah.
If a passive investor doubles their money, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's usually in a 5-year period.
Yeah. And so getting into real estate, were you facing into were you concerned about retirement? Were you concerned about putting more food on your table in terms of, helping to pay for college tuitions, helping to pay for weddings, helping to pay for cars? I mean,
okay, well, so the big thing was looking at the long game, right? Because real estate's not a get rich quick program. but like Grant Cardone is fond of saying, it's get rich for sure. It takes time, and you need to put a plan together. So we were looking at boosting our retirement. We wanted to have some other streams of income coming in for a variety of reasons. One was, I was doing contract work. Now, when we first got in, I wasn't doing contract work, but as I shifted over to doing contract work, then it made more sense to have some other income coming in, because sometimes you go 1, 2, 3 months between contracts,
Yeah.
and you've got to be able to support yourself in there. So it was either do passive real estate or go work at Starbucks.
Yeah, and with passive real estate, you are not selling your time for money, right? That's something Robert
Exactly.
Kiyosaki talks about. That's something Kim Kiyosaki talks about, right? When
Hmm.
you're working a W-2 job, which is obviously okay, you were doing it, I was doing it. But basically, you and I are like a lot of the viewers out there. We had dreams of retiring and living a life of freedom, living a life of
Hmm.
abundance, being able to take vacations, being able to have free time. And when you're working a job, whether it's a W-2 or you're a contract laborer, you're selling your time for money. And as you get closer to retirement, your time is very precious, right? As you
Yep.
get older, your time is very precious, and you want to do the things you want to do. Maybe that's golfing, maybe that's some sort of travel, maybe that's some other hobbies, but typically it's not working a job in any
Yeah, no, I mean,
capacity.
and
So
and that's kind of, if you fast forward to November of 2020, my wife and I were sitting around the kitchen table talking about finances and what retirement was going to look like, and we came to the realization that the bill of goods that Wall Street and corporate America had sold us wasn't quite all it was cracked up to be. And so we looked at, well, what are some other options? I mean, don't get me wrong, we'd had an okay retirement. We had money in our 401k, but we'd have to cut back on our standard of living. We'd have to cut back on what we give to our church and charities, and we'd have to cut back on our travel. And we didn't want to do any of that. We didn't want to cut back on anything. We wanted to step it up a notch. And we looked and go, well, how can we do that? How can we improve what our retirement's going to look like? And for us, the answer was syndicating real estate. So we did that transition from passive investor to active investor in March of 2021. And if anybody is thinking about doing that, I highly recommend it. But I also I cannot recommend enough that you find a coach and mentor that you can click with, that you understand them, that will help you. Don't try to do it by yourself.
yeah, there's so many lessons to be learned. I've been doing real estate for 20 years. You've been doing it for a long time as well. We've had our failures, right? We're human. We've
Yeah.
had our failures. I talk about my failures quite often. But I share, despite my failures in real estate, I've been extremely successful, as have you.
Hmm.
So if we can eliminate those failures, right, and learn from them, even better. So I agree with you. I know you do coaching, I do coaching. We try to help folks see that dream, see that life of abundance and that life of freedom that they can have for themselves. We resonate with them since we both have worked the W-2 jobs. We know what corporate America looks like. We
Hmm.
know all the blemishes that are out there in terms of just sticking with maybe a savings account or a Social Security is going to be there to save you. Let me tell you, if any of the viewers are thinking Social Security is going to save you, it's not. You will be living in poverty if you're planning on
Oh, and
Social
that's
Security.
the thing, and everybody, now everybody assumes that Social Security is supposed to take care of you. It was never meant
Correct.
to be a living wage in retirement.
Yeah.
It was just to supplement what you had saved yourself, or to supplement your company pension. Of course, very, very few companies have pensions anymore.
Yeah, correct. I think we've demonstrated, for the viewers, how we get their situation. We understand where they're coming from. We understand a lot of the viewers here, we know, are facing into maybe retirement or having to pay higher bills, either college tuition is coming due or whatever it is. We get that. We've been there. We are your tribe, so to speak, right? We are you. And we've lived that life, and we've found a way over the bridge to a better life, more freedom, more abundance. So you've heard Shawn's story here. So Shawn, take us closer to today. What are you doing today? I know you're in the Dallas Fort Worth area. You're living there now, and that's where you do your syndications. And there's a lot of goodness living in the location where you're doing syndications. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing today.
Well, we literally just had an LOI, a letter of intent, accepted last week on a fairly large property in the Dallas Fort Worth area. We're looking forward to getting the contract signed on that and moving forward. It's going to be a pretty heavy lift. It needs probably about $3 million of capital improvements. We're also doing some ground up self-storage development. The most recent one that we closed on was in Houston. They've got another, the team has another one coming up here I think will break ground in September. And then, we've got a couple other projects that are a little further out. I'm in the process of writing a book. That just, a little bit of everything going on. The next, the deal between, getting the letter of intent accepted and getting to closing. So I'm going to be just a little busy for the next couple of months.
Yes, you will. So why Dallas Fort Worth area? What, and Houston? Like, what makes you so liking that particular area? I mean, you must study like demographics and, migration patterns, and like the rest of us, we study this stuff, and that's why we go to experienced mentors and coaches, because
Yeah.
this is what we look at. But what's driving you to that area?
So, all the things you mentioned, right? I mean, the demographics, the state of Texas has around 1,000 people a day moving to it. The DFW Metroplex, about 300 to 400 people a day are moving here. And that's a very good sized apartment complex moving into the area every single day. So just the people moving in alone wouldn't necessarily do it. But I mean, obviously, you've got to look at key factors of places I look to invest. Is it's got to be a business friendly state. It's got to be a landlord friendly state. It's got to be growing in terms of population as well as jobs. So you've got to have those basic demographics. If an area has been flat for the last 10 or 15 years with no population growth, no job growth, the outlook for that area to grow is not good. And you want to have growth, because otherwise you're not going to be able to, there's going to be no incentive to raise your rent, because if you raise your rent, people will just leave.
Yeah,
In the
so
Dallas Fort Worth area, there's nowhere for them to go to.
yeah. So for the viewers, again, this is why we team up with mentors and coaches and people who have done the business, is because it's not just about buying a mobile home park or a multifamily building, or doing a ground up project. It's not just about putting money behind that. It's about understanding the fundamentals, right? You need to
Yeah.
understand these migration patterns. What's happening politically in that state? Is it landlord friendly or is it tenant friendly, right? What's happening with manufacturing? Is it coming into the state or is it leaving the state? What's the education of the demographic look like? Are they highly trained? Are they technical? Or is it a very low level, workforce? These are all different things that Shawn is explaining, that he looks at, that I look at, that it's so important when you team up with a syndicator. You're dealing with somebody who's a syndicator, who's actually an authority in their particular location. Shawn knows Dallas Fort Worth. He knows the Texas market very well. Obviously, he's calling out, and I stand behind those numbers. There's, about 1,000 people moving into Texas each and every day, right? They are the number two. The number one is Florida. There's about 1,200 people a day moving into Florida, 1,000 moving into Texas. Those are huge numbers. Those are huge migration patterns. And so, again, for the viewer, I want to stress, you need to find somebody who's an authority, somebody like a Shawn, who sees these things, who's not just putting investor money into a project just to keep the machine running. He's actually looking at it and saying, hey, there's some longevity here. This is not a boom for the next year. This is a boom for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. This is where this state is going. So being an authority is such an important thing to team up with the syndicator. I mean, and that's my perspective. Shawn, what do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I always like to remind my investors, just because I present a deal to them doesn't mean they should jump in and invest in it. And I hate the term passive investor, because they really shouldn't be passive. They should do some work on vetting the deal. And if they don't know how to underwrite a deal, find somebody to teach them.
Yeah.
talk to your sponsor, say, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about how you value this deal, or find a mentor out there there's tons of people out there that teach that.
Yeah.
And don't just get to know me. Don't take my word for it that it's a good deal. Meet everybody on the sponsor team, because you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. I had a deal that I was invested in as a passive investor. There were 5 general partners on the deal. There were 5 different business plans. There were 5 different ideas how that property should be run. And the property management got 5 different directions. Well, guess what? They just kind of threw up their hands and go, when you guys figure out what you're doing, call us.
Yeah.
And they just basically fell to the lowest level of support required by their contract, which, as you well know, is not enough to make a property run well at all. And, they had told us, oh yeah, you're going to double your money and you're going to have 9% cash flow, which should also tell you this was a while ago. And we had no cash flow for like 2.5 years, and they sold it. At least on the plus side, we did end up making some money. We didn't lose money, but it wasn't the double that they promised. It wasn't even close. I think we made like 14% a year or something
Yeah,
like
but
that.
getting to know the GPs in the deal and their level of investment.
Yes.
I never invest on anything unless the GPs are also in the deal,
Yes.
have their money in the deal, because that's just like, that's kind of like a cardinal rule. The other thing I like to see is, you mentioned the property manager. I love talking to the property managers. Now, I have a lot of experience behind me. I know what questions to ask and kind of where the dead bodies are, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of property management. So, it's kind of fun for me to have those conversations with them, because we kind of go all over the place, but it allows me to identify their level of expertise, and then also their level of participation, because in some deals, the property manager is part of the deal. They are actually putting some money into the deal, which I often like seeing,
Oh, I
because if you
love
have a
seeing that.
right, you have a property manager with money in the deal, they are going to make sure that property runs well. So
Yes. Yeah, I've
go
got a
ahead.
guy that we invest with. He jokingly says that my wife is his favorite investor, and she keeps a pool of money that I'm not allowed to touch, and she goes, "That's for Lane's next deal. You can't touch that." His property management company, they all invest in the deals, and they're given the first opportunity, and then after they invest, then he turns it out to his investors.
Yeah, that's a key piece of it. But that's also, it comes with your experience. It comes with my experience. A new passive investor into a syndication may not know they should be asking those type of questions, but that's what we help
Oh
them with.
yeah.
One of the other things I like to get from you, because I agree, it shouldn't be all passive and leaving it up to others to make you rich and free. What sort of books and what sort of maybe podcasts do you listen to, or the books that you read, that could potentially help folks that are just starting out in real estate?
Things. I mean, obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? That kind of gives you a basis. There's several other books out there. Tom Wheelwright has written several. If you want to learn more about the tax side of things, I think his most recent one is Win-Win Wealth Strategy.
Yeah.
7 investments the government will pay you to make. And no, Tom is not paying me to hawk his book. If you've never had a chance to listen to Tom Wheelwright, he is absolutely the most interesting CPA you will ever find. For people that don't know him, they do know Robert Kiyosaki. Tom is Robert's CPA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, he talks about understanding the tax code and how to use it to your advantage, to generate wealth. Obviously, one of the things is real estate. That's one of the big ones.
So there's
Uh,
there's a couple of book recommendations for folks, which is good. I agree with. I've read both those, and yeah, that's a good starter for folks to start learning the real estate game and why to be in it. What about like podcasts or anything like that? Do you have any particular favorites you like to go to?
well, the Best Ever podcast has a very wide variety of people and guests that come on there. There's
And that's Joe. Is that Joe Fairless?
Yeah, Joe Fairless, but he doesn't do the podcast anymore. It's
Okay.
Slocum Reed, and there's somebody else that the two of them trade off.
Okay. So the best ever podcast.
Yeah,
That's
I was
that's
actually
one.
just on with Slocum Reed. It hasn't gone live yet.
Yeah. So that's a good one folks can watch. Because I know a lot of folks are obviously super busy. I get it. You get it, Shawn, right? Everybody's busy. So they put it on in their car. They listen to it while they're driving to work or while they're working out or something like
Mhm.
that. So that's one of the things I like to share with folks in these podcasts. So they walk
Yeah,
away with some sort of, action they can do, right? It's
yeah,
not just about hearing us, banter back and forth. It's about sharing our story, understanding that, yes, we are them.
yeah.
We're not
And
just, we're not superhuman. We didn't get this way because we came from money or anything like that. That's not it. We
no,
get them, right? We we
yeah,
are
we educate ourselves and we're persistent.
so we're all part of that tribe where we're all trying to help each other. And, we all had that dream of living a better life, having more freedom, having more wealth, being able to retire comfortably, right? We've all been there. We all understand that dream. And then as far as, to get there, you do have to take action. So like Shawn is saying,
Yeah,
hey, pick up a couple of those books, watch some podcasts, right? That's an easy way to get started. And then
yeah.
obviously, connecting with folks like you, Shawn. So how can folks connect with you to learn more about what you do, learn, where you're investing these days? Where can they connect?
Probably the easiest way is just go to my website. It's twtmultifamily.com. And if they want to get in touch with me, there's a book a call button on there. They can book a call and we can have a conversation. There's information on my website about the deals we're invested in. There's a section that it's a little hard to find, but it's on like where I've been on social media. Once this one gets live and you send me the links, I'll be putting that up there as well. Um, but yeah, that's probably the easiest way.
So go to Shawn's website, connect with him. He, as you can see, he's super personable. It's not like he's gonna make this hard for you or make this any more confusing than it needs to be. It doesn't. There's everybody from janitors investing in real estate,
Mhm.
blue collar to obviously white collar. But this is nothing super difficult. And it does provide you that path to a better life, more freedom, more abundance, better
Mhm.
retirement. So connect with Shawn on his website. And Shawn, thank you so much for coming on. Again, I think you really exemplify, the fact that we are a tribe. We're all trying to figure this out together. We
Yep.
are working towards a common dream. We all want a better life for ourselves, and that we all have to take action, not just you and me, but also the viewer. Go on to thriftbooks.com. Go find some used books. Rich Dad,
Yeah.
Poor Dad, I'm sure is out there, right? So
Oh,
go to Thrift
yeah.
Books. You don't have to pay full price, or go to Amazon. If you have an Amazon account, most folks do. Go buy those couple of books. It's not going to break the bank. And definitely podcasts are free. So listen to those. So those are great actions that you've shared,
And
Shawn.
and that's a great point, Tony. The education part is paramount. You need to understand what you're going to be investing in. But the key thing you said there was take action. There's action in going and buying the book, but if you just get the book and read it, it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
You need to make a connection with somebody like Tony or somebody like myself that is out there putting deals together. You don't have to jump in and invest with us. Just have a conversation.
Yes.
Talk to us, get to know us. Let us explain more what we're doing. I'll be totally honest. I mean, the first time I invested and I read a PPM, it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information in there,
Yeah.
and get the education and then take some action by making a connection.
That's great advice, Shawn. And we'll leave it there so folks can start doing that, taking action. Shawn, thank you so much again for being on, helping the viewer, helping people out there. I know you do so much to help people. And so God bless you. We appreciate it. I appreciate it for sure. So Shawn, thank you so much for coming on.
Really appreciate it, Tony. Thanks for having me on.
Alrighty, take care.